Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You'll excuse the fact that I'm out of breath, but about 10 or 15 minutes ago, a tragic thing, from all indications at this point, has happened in the city of Dallas. Let me quote to you this. And you'll excuse me if I am out of breath. A bulletin. This is from the United Press in Dallas. President Kennedy and Governor John Connally have been cut down by assassins' bullets in downtown Dallas. They were riding an open automobile when the shots were fired. The president, his limp body carried in the arms of his wife Jacqueline, is rushed to Parkland Hospital. And if you'll excuse me if I give some directions.
Welcome back to the Tangent Podcast. It's been a while, Jack. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, and yes, it has been a while, and that is mostly my fault, so I apologize for that. I have just moved into a new home, and for about 2 weeks I had, no computer and no internet and no flooring and stuff like that. So
and no money now
but
either.
We're mostly set up and ready to go. No money now. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, being a homeowner is great, but you're also broke.
And then all of a sudden, at the instant I was ready to go, Austin fried his computer.
Yep.
So then we had to wait another week or so for him to build a new computer. But we're here.
I didn't fry my computer. The electric company fried my computer. Okay.
That's technique. You need to plug your computer into a surge protector, my guy.
I do. I will say I was so scared putting it together this time because the last computer that I built, I did fry the motherboard while I was building it.
I've done that before too.
Yep. And luckily, props, I will shout out MSI here because I emailed them and they replaced it for free, even though I fried it.
Nice.
Yep.
Good on them.
Yep. So I'll be loyal to them for a while now. Another shout out while I'm on the subject. My cousin Trevor sent us $20 for the Do Fund. So
what
thanks,
a guy.
Trev. He and his wife Natalie, they are doing a super cool thing where they both work for the same company. Like, I don't know, they're programmers or web developers or something. I don't know exactly what they do, but they work remotely. And so every 3 or 4 months, they just move to a new place around the continent. So they've lived in, I think they're in Hawaii right now, but they've been in Arizona, California, Washington, Canada, or they're going to Canada. But every few months, they just move around and live in Airbnbs, and they're our most loyal fans besides Brad. He's our other one too. But yeah, they sent us $20 for the Do Fund and said, keep doing what we're doing. So Trev and Nat, we appreciate you. Love you guys.
I'm not going to lie. That lifestyle sounds horrible, but I commend them for it.
Well,
it ain't for me.
They're young and adventurous and don't have kids and haven't been beaten down by the world yet. So I think they have the time and energy to do it. Plus they're just adventurous. So
hey, as long as they're listening to the old Tangent Podcast, I mean, that's everything else you do. It doesn't matter because you're already on the right track.
Share it with the people where you go to around the country, so that we can learn, so that we can grow and have new fans around the world. Yeah,
so yes, thank you, cool. Thank you for that.
That was fun. So tonight's drink will be in honor of Trev and Nat. Jack, what are we drinking tonight?
This is a new brand that neither of us have ever tried. It is Bucked Up Energy, and it's got a picture of I don't know animals. Is that a deer
I would think it's a buck,
an elk, a buck. Oh, that's different. I thought a buck was just a male deer. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah,
oh,
it's
okay.
A male deer. Yeah.
So I was right when I said deer.
Buck, a deer, a male deer. Yep.
Nice. I will say, I'm pretty sure I'm going to feel bad about this, saying, oh yeah, we found this drink and we got to try it kind of thing. Because I know for a fact that Darren sent us a picture of these years ago telling us to try them.
Really?
They've been around know for that long? Fact he did. I think so. So technically, I'm gonna give this one to Darren as well. So thank you for the idea on Bucked Up Energy.
Okay.
I'm 95% sure. If not, I'm just gonna sound silly. But there you go, Darren.
Well, I'm pretty sure these guys are a Utah company too, because I see their billboards all over Utah County. Let me just verify that here. Really? They are. Yep, American Fork.
Ah, nice.
DAS Labs or
American
DOS Labs. They do a lot of other supplements too. Like they have protein and pre-workout and all that kind of stuff. So it is blue raz flavor. Although there's not like a fun description to read out on the side.
Oh yeah. Well, there's this. When you feel it, you just got bucked up.
Ooh.
That's horrible. Please change that.
Is that a play on effed up? I'm guessing.
I'm gonna guess yes.
Let's give it a try. Blue raz hasn't really ever disappointed me in the past. So
yeah, 0 sugar.
Smells pretty good.
So what we got. Yes, it does.
Ooh, it's solid.
You know, that's actually really good. It's not like too strong like most energy drinks are.
No,
it's actually fairly mild, and it's a good flavor.
It has a little bit of like vitamin-y flavor to me. I'm wondering if they added like some other supplements to it, but it's pretty good.
I think it is because, you know, it does have 8,333% of your daily allotment of vitamin B12.
Oh my gosh. Holy crap. Oh, and 470% of vitamin B6. Oh my god.
So gosh. I think that's vitamin B you're tasting. But hey, it's not the best energy drink I've ever tasted, but it's good. I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Yeah, I was going to say 7 to 7.5. It does have 300 milligrams of caffeine, so we're going to be up for a while.
Whoa. It's got teacrine in it.
What the heck is teacrine? Are you sure you're not dyslexic?
And also dynamine.
Dynamine. What the heck?
No idea what any of that means.
Teacrine. Oh, and alpha size, apparently.
Alpha size. That's what they called me in high school.
I was going to say, is this like a male enhancement drink or something?
Yeah, seriously. Interesting.
Right.
Good drink, though. We have another one planned for next one. We've got a different flavor from them, so I'm excited.
They do have tons of flavors, and get this. So I went up to Salt Lake last week and stopped at a gas station on the way home to get a snack. And the gas station, I need to go back and find it. Because you know how some gas stations have like the beer cave where it's like a walk-in freezer with beer?
Yeah.
These guys had the energy cave.
Oh, that's amazing.
So just the same thing, but with energy drinks. And there were like 15, maybe not 15, but tons of bucked up flavors that I want to try.
Dude, I'm looking at all of them right now. They've got, I don't know what that one is. Oh, Jimin Juice?
Yeah. They have Miami is one that I want to try.
Strawberry Kiwi, Pink Lemonade, Mango Tango, Blood Raz, Rocket Pop, Killa, OJ. Ooh, I gotta try Killa OJ, dude. Grape Gains, Wild Orchard, Miami. I need to try Miami. And Pump and Grind. That's one right there.
It is a male enhancement drink. Yep. Pump and Grind.
All right.
Well, that's good.
Well,
yeah, solid. I'll try more of their flavors for sure.
And what's next on the list? We got ourselves some space news.
We do have some fun space news. This is as of today, so real fresh. As of the day that we are recording. So by the time you've listened, this is no longer brand new, but it will be within the past week that researchers have found a new water reservoir on the moon. So that's kind of cool. So it's attracted a lot of attention because of its potential for like resource utilization for future exploration missions. So like we've heard about NASA or other space groups wanting to set up like a base on the moon that they can then launch from to go other places. So this water would give them a potential resource there to make it a little bit more habitable for a base. But it could be a sign of potential life, whether that's like single-celled organisms or complex organisms. We don't know, but water is usually the sign that there could be life somewhere. So it's pretty cool. They have found some other water and ice on the moon before. But yeah, they found some water on there, so that's pretty cool.
That is kind of neat. I'm guessing it's in ice form.
I actually don't know. I'm trying to look at that now and see. Let's see here. It doesn't say. It does say there's water or ice, or water and ice on the moon, but it doesn't say what this specifically is. It says it's a water reservoir. So I don't know if it's iced over or not. I would imagine so because I think the moon's freaking cold.
There's no atmosphere, so.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Every day we get closer to alien life.
Yeah, it's out there, man. It's definitely out there. I saw it. I saw the ship.
Saw the ship? What?
Remember when I told the aliens to come get me?
Yeah,
I saw the UFO.
That's true. You did.
Well, all right. That's it for space news. What do you got for us?
I got us a real quick encounter, and yeah, just a good creepy encounter from a real person to get us started. You ready? You ready for this one?
Yep.
All right. We're gonna hear about. It's called Writing in the Mirror. It goes. This is the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. Most people I tell tried to come up with a logical explanation, but there is none. So, after living in my new house for 5 months or so, I decided to take a shower. Wait. Did they not shower for 5 whole months at living in this house?
Wait, read that sentence again.
So after living in my new house for 5 months or so, I decide to take a shower.
That's what it sounds like, but I don't think...
I'm thinking they just mean after 5 months of them living there, and then at one point, 5 months in, they decided to take a shower. Okay. One of my friends had just slept over. I had taken a crap ton of showers in that bathroom already. There we go. So it's not like it was anything new. So I take my shower, get out to dry off, and looked up at the steamed up mirror. On the mirror, in perfect writing, perfect as in no human could possibly do this with their finger, read something along the lines of, "Dear Father, please forgive me." Ew. I completely forgot the rest because I was so freaked out. But it was terrifying. The bathroom door was locked the entire time, and no one could have gotten in. It had also never been there any other time I took a shower. So yeah, I have no idea what that was, but it scared the crap out of me. And that's it.
Ugh.
That is a little disturbing.
Now, that is disturbing. Here's what I will say. If they didn't take a shower in their new house for 5 months, it's possible that somebody that lived there before wrote that as a joke on the mirror, and then if they didn't steam up that mirror for 5 months and then they just like found it one day, it could have been like an innocent prank that somebody played 5 months ago or a year ago, and then they were just unlucky enough to like see it. Does that make sense?
Right, but it does say here, I have already taken a crap ton of showers in that bathroom already.
Okay.
So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but unfortunately, I don't think that's our case. That's an interesting one, and it is terrifying. I probably wouldn't use that bathroom for a while after that.
Yeah. Well, that's a good one. Yeah. What did it say again? It said... Tell me what it said again.
At what point?
The first time.
The entire thing?
Yeah, so...
Oh, what it said in the mirror, you mean?
Yeah, in the mirror. Sorry, the writing.
It said, quote, read something along the lines of, "Dear Father, please forgive me."
Ugh. Was it could you tell if it was a man or a woman that sent the...
No. I was just about to say that. I have no idea who it was. I'm curious to see if this was a man who had a child in any way, maybe a child that had passed on, or maybe a child that I don't know. That would be interesting. But if it was like a maybe like a single woman with no kids, then that doesn't make any sense. But
Right. Huh. That is creepy. Yikes.
well, best of luck in your home.
Yep. Make sure you cleanse that bathroom, sage it real nice, and
Age it real good.
say some prayers. Well, cool. Should we get into the topic for the day?
Now let's get real nitty gritty into this, and this is a quite the topic. I think this may be one of the most complex topics we've ever done.
It's one of the most complex, and also it is one of the first major conspiracies, I feel like. So it's one of the first like really big ones out in the media, huge international implication, but also it is the primary conspiracy that most Americans say that they don't believe. I guess I should say the majority of Americans, so over 50% of Americans, I think it's somewhere in the 70s percentage-wise, don't believe the official story that has come out about this incident. And what we're talking about today is the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. So this happened back in 1963. It was November 22nd of 1963. Happened in Parkland Heath, Dallas, Texas. So John F. Kennedy, he's the 35th president of the U.S. And I wanted to kind of kick it off by going into a little bit of his life. So he came from what was considered like basically American royalty. He comes from a very wealthy, very political family. Like his family has been involved in politics for a long time. So I believe I read somewhere that somebody in the Kennedy family has been involved in politics, in some like national level politics, over the past like 80 years up until like the last couple years. So very politically influential family, very wealthy. His father was the head spokesman for the SEC, Securities and Exchanges Commission. So he had a lot of national recognition and a lot of, I guess, power in the nation. He's had a lot of family members in politics as well. His brother Robert Kennedy he died as well, and there's theories that he was assassinated as well. So his family, very influential, very wealthy. He grew up in Massachusetts, and he went to school at Princeton and then did, I believe, his law degree at Harvard. So not too shabby of an education there.
It's a very smart man.
Incredibly smart man, and very charismatic as well, right? Like anytime anyone talks about Kennedy, they describe him as like presidential, charismatic, very like easy talking, like smooth talking, very like poised, like carried himself really well. So he was oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, like, did you mention that he was in the military as well?
Yeah, I'm kind of getting into that. So
okay.
So yeah, he did his schooling, and then he did serve in World War II as well. And he's actually like he received 2 medals in the military. He's like a war hero. And
he was considered a war hero. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was in the Navy, I believe, and he fought on the Pacific Theater. And his boat was like shot down, and he was like captaining or leading the crew on this boat. And his boat was shot, and he had to get his crew to this island, and they were marooned on this island, like trying to survive for like 6 days before they were rescued. And so he was instrumental in getting his crew from the shipwreck to safety and like helping them survive on this island. And during that time, he sustained a really bad back injury. Well, I read conflicting things on this. I read that he sustained it during that battle, but I also read that he had sustained an injury before that and then like re-aggravated it during this battle. But it was something that he struggled with the rest of his life. Like he always wore a back brace, like a really sturdy back brace under his suit, and had this just nagging back issue for basically his whole life after this. So yeah, he was a very decorated war hero and seen as just a great leader, right? Like he comes from a family of leaders. And so he was always, it seemed like, destined to become the leader. And like, I read that his dad would kind of joke with him like, hey, you need to become the president. Like the Bushes are going to get there first, or like this person's going to get there first. If you don't go for it, like someone's going to get it before you do. And so I think he probably always had it in his mind that he was going to end up in politics, because that's just kind of what his family did, right? And then he also married into another family, the Onassis family. So his wife, Jackie Kennedy Onassis, she was like a big socialite. Her family was very wealthy and influential as well, so he married into that. So he kind of comes from like the perfect background, right? Like high political family, wealthy, good education, good upbringing, war hero, great leader, and is just like destined for greatness, right? Also, he's the youngest US president to ever be elected. I believe he was 42 or 43 when he was elected. Maybe, I can't remember if that was when he was elected or when he died. So he was born in, let's see here. I just lost my page. He was born in 1917. So that would have put him at 46 when he died. So he would have been, I believe, 44 when he was elected. But youngest president ever. He's Catholic. So he comes from like that Boston Catholic background. And a lot of people did have some concern that he would put like his religious beliefs over the nation, like his religious ideology over the Constitution or over like what was best for the country. But I think that he did a pretty good job of coming in, and even though he was a Democrat, his policies were pretty progressive. Like even for a Democrat, he really tried to make a lot of progress. I feel like he ran into kind of a crap show of events that happened too. So he came in during the middle of the Cold War. So he came in 1961 and was only president for 2 years before he was shot. But he came in, during the middle of the Cold War. And at this time was kind of the tail end of the Red Scare. So the Red Scare was a period of time from the 40s up through the 50s and into the 60s where communism was becoming really strong in Russia. So this is kind of post Joseph Stalin, post World War II era communism. And the Soviet Union was kind of rising to power at this time. And along with the Cold War and kind of the threat of nuclear war right after World War II, it was a very tense time in the world. And so he had a lot of things that he had to do with foreign policy that really affected not only the US, but affected the entire world, right? And affected really, I feel like, the history, like the outcome of even how we're living today. I feel like he had a large hand in affecting how things are today. I'd say some of the biggest of his foreign affairs things. So in 1961, an incident commonly referred to as the Bay of Pigs. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Bay of Pigs or looked into it much, but at this time, the Soviet Union they were deep into communism, and they had kind of some like governments around the world that were communist, but they were controlled by the Soviet Union. So Cuba was one of those where they're communist, but kind of under the Soviet Union at the same time. Sorry, I have hiccups. 1 second.
Oh, you're good.
Take a drink here real quick. All right. So Bay of Pigs was the CIA and the military wanted to kind of squash Cuba because they were very communist at the time and kind of scaring the US a little bit. And so the US, the CIA and the military went to Kennedy and said, we need to invade them. We need to just kind of squash this issue right now and take care of it. And Kennedy agreed, but he didn't give them any air support. So basically he agreed to the invasion, but didn't agree to like a full military invasion. So it was basically the CIA and then like ground forces that went in, and they had some backing from like Cuban, like guerrilla warfare people that were opposing the communist government there. And so they went in, and it was just like a terrible invasion. Like they got decimated, right? Like they didn't do well. They didn't complete the mission, and it was seen as a huge like black stain on the Kennedy administration because he didn't give the proper authorization to really do the job right. That's kind of what the military and CIA saw it as, is why didn't you give us the power that we needed, or the supplies, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like the resources that we needed to do this right. Like we're trying
firepower.
like the firepower, like we're trying to squash communism, but you're like holding back a little bit on us. Right. So I think he kind of pissed a lot of people off, and he was always seen as
invasion was basic. It was a pretty complete failure, wasn't it? Like it was bad.
Yeah, it was bad. And the goal was to crush communism there, and the US lost. Like it was a failed operation for sure. And so they tried to overthrow Castro, but it completely failed. And so they saw it as a failure because Kennedy didn't authorize you used a good word, like the firepower needed. And a lot of people saw that as like, well, where does Kennedy stand on communism or on these issues that we're trying to push back on, right? So a lot of people saw that as maybe he doesn't have our best interests at heart, or maybe he's not as like anti-communist as we think he should be. And so I think he might have made some enemies there within the U.S. government, the CIA, and military, things like that, because they felt like he had kind of betrayed them on that. And I'll say this. I don't know how strong Cuba was at the time, but the U.S. military is like the world's strongest military. So you would think that they could have decimated Cuba. But I don't know all the details, but it was a complete failure. And so I think he pissed a lot of people off, and then that was like the first really big thing that he had to deal with in his administration. And then the next year, 1962, was the Cuban Missile Crisis. So at this time, the Soviet Union, it was discovered that they were constructing nuclear missile bases in Cuba. And so this was another thing where the military was like, why didn't you give us the authorization to just like squash them last year? You know, like the Bay of Pigs, like, why didn't we just take them out? And so he had to negotiate, I think it was like 15 days of really tense negotiation, right? Because there's missiles right there next to the US. And so Nikita Khrushchev was the leader of the Soviet Union at the time. And he was seen as a guy who was trying to move away from Stalinism. Like Stalin was one of the big communist leaders in Russia, and he was trying to move away from that like dictatorship type of communism. I still think that any communism is not great, but Kennedy always seemed to be more of like a peacemaker and a negotiator rather than like, let's go straight to war, right?
Right.
And
he was definitely a let's talk it out rather than kill each other.
Which, I mean, I can see that as being like a net positive for sure, because you stay, if you can stay on good terms, I think long term that helps more than just like squashing a bug right then, you know, and leads to less bad blood. And he was charismatic enough and like smooth talking enough and smart enough that I think he was able to pull that off. So the Cuban Missile Crisis, he did steer the country to a successful negotiation there, and basically told Russia, like, you can't have missile silos near the US. And they were like, well, you're putting up missiles in Turkey, so you have to take those down. And they're like, okay, like, we'll compromise. We can take some of our missiles out of like the surrounding countries. You take your missiles out of Cuba and we'll be good for now. So tension was really high during those 2 years, right? Like nuclear war was on the horizon, the Cold War, the Red Scare, everything going wrong. And I think those two incidents really showed a lot of people like Kennedy's not as, and whether this is true or not, they were thinking, I don't think he really wants to squash communism as much as we do. Like he's kind of being a little lax on this in their eyes, you know?
Right.
And the other thing is, so after World War II, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, complete World War II hero, right? Like, I think he was a 4-star general, if I remember right, but seen as a complete war hero and then became the president, seen as a great leader. And he had come out years before, I believe in the 50s, his kind of parting address as president, and warned about something that's called the military-industrial complex. So it's a term that's still thrown around today in conspiracies and kind of the zeitgeist of like the mysterious and conspiratorial, right? And so this military industrial complex is basically the theory that like there's a few high level like defense and weapons contractors in the US that make weapons for war, and they make millions, billions of dollars off of the United States being at war. And so I think that was another big enemy that Kennedy made, by not going to war, was that he was cheating these weapons and defense companies out of all this money, and their business is to be at war, right? So basically he's made some theoretical enemies in the CIA, the military, with the Soviet Union and Cuba as well, and then with these defense companies. And so, let me backtrack a little bit. So when Kennedy gets into office, also the war in Vietnam is going on. And so that's where these weapons companies are making their money, right? They're sending all these weapons over to Vietnam and being paid by the government for all this equipment. And about a month before Kennedy's assassination, he called for all the troops to be taken out of Vietnam. The war had been going on since, I believe, 1955. And a month before he died, he calls for them all to be taken out. Lyndon Johnson next comes in as president. He's sworn in right after Kennedy dies. And he's like, nope, all out assault. And that's when the incident called the Gulf of Tonkin happened. I don't know if you've heard much about the Gulf of Tonkin or read into it, but it was basically like a scam by the U.S. government to have an excuse to stay at war in Vietnam. So there was a boat, U.S. warship, that was floating around in the sea over like northern Vietnam, supposedly on an intel mission, and it was reported that they were fired at by 3 Vietnamese torpedo boats. And the boat wasn't shot down, and I don't think anybody died, but they called in an airstrike on those boats. And then there was another boat, the USS Turner Joy, that was also fired upon, but it was discovered that that was a complete like lie or fabrication made up by the US to justify the decision to stay at war with Vietnam. So again, Kennedy comes in during the war, puts an end to the war, and then a month later he dies. Lyndon Johnson comes in and then just basically gets approval from Congress to do whatever's necessary to go to war in Vietnam. So that's a big thing too, is this military-industrial complex making tons of money off of this war. He tries to end it, and then a month later he's assassinated. So that's a little bit of background, I guess, about JFK and some of the major foreign policy and decisions that he had to make while he was in the presidency. So very high profile, right? Like, I mean, it seems high profile to us. I don't know. Today, I'm sure the president deals with that kind of stuff all the time too, but it was a very, very, very tense time in the world for him to come in. And I think he did a good job of kind of steering us through that. So let's get a little bit into the assassination. So this happened on November 22nd of 1963, again in Dallas, Texas. So President Kennedy was going there because there was a Dallas senator and Dallas Governor Connolly were kind of button heads at the time on some policy. And so President Kennedy was going there to help mediate between the two and kind of solve some issues that they had in the state that were coming up. So he made a trip to Dallas. He had his wife with him. And about a week before he was scheduled to be there, they released the route of his presidential motorcade that would be going through the city. So people could go and wave and, you know, kind of meet and greet with the president or whatever. And then the day before that, they changed the route a little bit. But they kind of knew where he was going to be. And also, he was in a car, a convertible, that didn't have a top on it, too. And this was, it was also a specially modified car so that the seats were raised up a little bit so that he could be seen better by the people. So everyone in the car was like slightly raised up. I don't know if the seats were like electrical and they could raise up and down or what it was, but the car was modified so that he would be sat up in a higher position, basically, and more noticeable. So he's driving down the street. Have you ever seen what's called the Zapruder film of the assassination?
I haven't. I've heard of it.
Okay,
but I've never watched it myself.
I'll post the link in the show notes. Disclaimer right now. You see him get shot in the head. So like you see his head part of his head explode.
What's it called again?
Zapruder. I can send you the link to it. I've got it pulled up right here.
Why is it called the Zapruder?
The man that took it, his last name was Zapruder. So it's a pretty low quality film because obviously it's the 60s. But if you watch it, so you see how this happens is, so the film shows them driving down the street. I'll kind of explain it, but the film shows them driving down the street, and they pass behind this sign. So there's some audio or some like transcription of what they're talking about. So he's in the car with his wife in the back seat. Governor Connolly's in the front seat, and then their driver, I believe Governor Connolly's wife, is in the car as well. But they're driving down the street, and the wife looks to President Kennedy and says, like, you can't say that Dallas doesn't love you. And he says something like, yeah, you can't say it. This is pretty cool, something like that. And so it shows them driving down the street. It's kind of a view looking down from the top left of the car. So you're looking down, the car is kind of on the bottom right, and you see the car drive behind a billboard or a sign. And then as the car comes out on the other side, you see President Kennedy clutching his throat and his neck. And you see Jackie like looking over toward him. And then the governor looks back as well. And then like 5 to 6 seconds later, you see this graphic, but you see the side of his head get blown off. Like you see the bullet.
I just watched it. Yeah.
You see the bullet impact.
Good.
And
wow, that is horrible.
So I don't know how much you've looked into the assassination. I'm sure you've looked into it a little bit and prep for this, but looking at that video, like what if you were to just see that video and think that bullet that hits him, like where would you think that bullet had come from?
It looks like it comes from the right of the camera, from wherever the filming is. Well, I honestly don't know. Let's see.
It is a little bit hard to say, but when he gets hit, you see his head. It kind of like jolts real quick, but then his head travels back. The famous saying is back and to the left, right?
Right. Yeah. So to the right of where the camera is from, but ahead of the car. So yeah, it kind of looks like it hits him in the right temple. Yeah. So like the front right corner of his head, if that's a good way of saying it.
Yeah. So it, I mean, it does, to me, I would think that a bullet hitting you in the head would, like have more force than that. Like it looks a little bit, like of a soft impact, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Like I'm kind of surprised it didn't do more damage than that. Like
yeah. So what I'm getting at here is one of the major, and I'll get into this theory in a minute. I guess let me explain the official story on this assassination. So he shot, right? So he gets hit in the official story. There were 3 bullets that were fired. The first bullet strikes Kennedy in the back of the neck, and goes through his throat, and then it hits Governor Connolly in the back and goes through his chest. Then it goes out the front of his chest into his wrist, passes through the other side of his wrist, and lodges itself into his thigh. So with one bullet, there were 7 entry and exit wounds. So the one in Kennedy's back, out his throat, so that's 2. Into Governor Connolly, out his chest, that's 4. In and out of his wrist, that's 6, and then into his thigh.
Jeez, that's insane.
So there's 7 and entry and exit wounds, right? And so that's the official story. The first bullet was shot, struck Kennedy in the throat. The second one missed. The third one hits him in the head. Governor Connolly was injured, but not fatally. So in the film, you see Jackie. I mean, she, like, if you watch this, it's a little weird because when he first gets shot, like, no one's freaking out. Like, Jackie's kind of just like touching his arm and holding him, and maybe they didn't realize what had happened yet. But
yeah, I bet it was just like we don't know what the heck, like what was that kind of thing.
But then he gets hit in the head, and Governor Connolly and his wife, like, duck down. Jackie's over the back of the car, and then a Secret Service agent is coming up to, like, coming over the back of the car as well. So one of the thoughts of why Jackie was climbing over the back of the car was, one, she's yelling for help, right? But then two,
that's what I was just wondering.
Then the second thing is she's grabbing his skull and his brain off the back of the car too. And there's a quote where she said, I tried to find the exact quote and I couldn't find it.
I know who that quote you're talking about. Let's see.
So she's let me see if I can find it again. So she said, where is it? I tried so hard to find it earlier and I couldn't. Okay, here it is. So she says, it's just the part of the quote that says, his blood, his brains were in my lap. But basically she's telling the story of, she looks over at him. He has this great expression on his face. He gets shot. And then she says that she saw a piece of his skull fly off, and then she saw another clean piece of his skull attached to his head still that was trying to come off. And then he fainted, and his blood and brains were in her lap. So that kind of paints the scene, right, of the horror that she's going through at this time. And then she climbs on the back of the car, supposedly screaming for help, and then the Secret Service agent comes, and then she could be grabbing his brain too. So they rush to Parkland Hospital. He's still alive, technically. He's basically brain dead, but he's medically still alive at this point. So they rush him to the hospital. They call a priest to give him his last rites, which is part of the Catholic tradition. Basically, the last rites, as far as I understand, it's a tradition to basically pass this person on to the other side, right, or onto heaven or whatever. And then Lyndon B. Johnson, just over 2 hours later, on Air Force One, is sworn in, and that's the famous picture that you've seen of Jackie standing next to him, and she's kind of got her head down, but you can see this expression on her face of kind of like, just like, what's happening right now, and then he's getting sworn in as a president. So that's what happens in the car, right? So the official story, there's a man named Lee Harvey Oswald. And the official story is that he fired the 3 shots from the 6th story of the Texas School Book Depository building that overlooked the square, Dealey Plaza, where they were. And he fired the 3 shots from a Mannlicher Carcano, so it was a 6.5 caliber bullet. And that the 2 struck the president, one of them missed. So he fled the scene. He was actually confronted on the way out of the building, but was able to make it out. They later found the bullet casings with his fingerprints on them in the building. And the gun as well, with his fingerprints all over it. So they know that he fired some of the shots, right? Or all the shots. That's the official story, is that he fired the 3 shots and killed him. Little bit about Lee Harvey Oswald. So he had a little bit of a rough childhood growing up. He was born into a family where his father died a couple months before he was born. And after he was born, his mom couldn't take care of him. So she sent him to an orphanage for a while. And I believe by the time he was 4 years old, his mom had kind of taken him back. But he grew up a little bit in an orphanage and was in and out of school for troubled young boys and things like that. And just had a rough life, And so he entered the military when he was 17. He was able to do that. He entered the Marines, and you had to be 18, but his brother, who was also in the military, who was his legal guardian, signed off on it and said he can enter. So when he is 17, he enters the Marines, and he's actually court-martialed twice. The first time that he was court-martialed, he was in his barracks, and the story is that he had this gun, a .22 caliber gun, that he dropped on the floor and it shot off and hit him in the arm. And he was trying to get discharged. The theory is that he was trying to get discharged from the military, so he basically shot himself with a caliber that wasn't powerful enough to do any damage. But he got court-martialed because he wasn't supposed to have his own weapon. And the other strange thing about him is that he became very obsessed with like Marxist and communist literature and rhetoric, basically communist, what's the word I'm looking for? Not religion, but the communist ideology, I guess.
Lifestyle.
Yeah, lifestyle. And he actually, while he was in the military, started studying the Russian language. And this was really odd because at this time, the Russian scare is big. This is in the 50s, right? So the Russian scare is really big, or the Red Scare is really big. And the U.S. is basically trying to sniff out any hint of communism in the country that they can and get rid of it. And the U.S. is the capitalist country in the world, and the symbol of capitalism and democracy. And so he started studying Russian, and this was seen as odd because typically people would only be exposed to the Russian language or taught that if they had a special assignment that had to deal with the Soviet Union. So some people think that he may have had some type of military assignment where he was working with the Soviet Union, but he became so obsessed with communism that he requested a leave of absence from the military, and he said it was to go home and take care of his sick mother. But 2 days after he got his request they actually dishonorably discharged him from the military. 2 days after this, he flies to Russia. He starts going to Russia to go live there and be a part of communism. And when he gets there, he's trying to basically get a visa to live there, and he tells the Russian government, hey, I've been in the military. I can give you military secrets if you basically give me safe passage here and let me live here. And they kind of research him out, vet him out, and realize that he was like lower level Marine. He didn't have any intelligence that would be worth anything. But they let him live there, and they put him in a prison. And while he was in the prison, he actually slit his wrists in a supposed suicide attempt. But what it did was it allowed him to be there for a longer time. They kept him there for a couple more weeks. And it was theorized that he slit his wrist so that he could extend his time that he was in the Soviet Union. So he's over in the Soviet Union. He's becoming obsessed with communism. He gets a girlfriend over there, dates a little bit. They actually give him a job as a lathe operator and in a factory, and they give him like a pretty good life because he tried to renounce his U.S. citizenship. He actually called the U.S. Embassy and was like, I want to renounce my citizenship and just live here. And he never filled the paperwork out, but they took his passport from him. And so he's over there working as a lathe operator. They actually gave him quite a bit of money too. He had a decent lifestyle above that of a typical Soviet citizen. And right. So he was living pretty well and was dating, and he actually, one girl broke up with him, and then 6 weeks later, he ended up marrying this other Russian girl. And pretty soon he realized that communism wasn't all it was, it was hyped up to be. And then requested his passport back from the U.S. Embassy. And basically, this is kind of weird to me. I mean, it makes sense, but it's also weird. So what they did, they gave him a repatriatization loan is what it's called. And what it is they gave him money to come back and start a new life because he was basically such an embarrassment to the U.S. over in Russia that they're like, you need to come back. We need you back here. So we'll pay you to come back and give you all this money to reassimilate into the U.S.
Just stop looking so bad for us, basically.
Yeah, basically to stop speaking out against the U.S. and making a fool of our country,
Right.
So he was enough of an a-hole that he got his paid trip back to the U.S. and brought his wife with him as well. Was able to bring his wife. So he comes back. He's kind of in and out of jobs, right? He's just like a drifter. He can't keep a job. He's still part of these communist groups within the U.S. that he's still trying to be a part of communism and seen as an enemy of the state. So you would think that the U.S. at this point would be monitoring him or trying to keep tabs on him, right? But they didn't really. And he was able to actually get the gun under a fake name. The gun that he used to shoot President Kennedy was a Mannlicher Carcano rifle. And he was able to get that from a catalog using a fake name. And so he basically came back, made a life for himself, and was just very displeased with his life. And it was rumored that he tried to assassinate some people before he actually killed President Kennedy. I couldn't find much on that, but he's still an enemy of the state, right? He still loves communism. And so the theory is that the official story is that he's fed up with the U.S. He wants to assassinate a high-level member of the U.S. to to show the superiority of communism. And so that's why he killed President Kennedy. He actually worked at the Texas School Book Depository and so had access to the building and was able to go up on the 6th floor and then fire the shots and kill him. So he ended up getting away. They found him soon after. And then one of the most puzzling things about this whole story is that a couple days later, he's in custody, and a man named Jack Ruby, who
this is like seriously like 2 days later.
Yeah.
When,
like
when he's on his way to the, was it to a court hearing or the jail or something?
Yeah,
I don't know
he's
exactly.
in police custody. Like the police have him in handcuffs and they're walking him. I've seen the footage. They're either walking him through a building. What was that?
I was gonna say, yeah, it was on live TV when this happened.
Yeah, and so Jack Ruby comes up and shoots him right there and kills him. And
right
so
in the
Jack,
stomach. Yep,
right in the stomach. So Jack Ruby was a nightclub owner in Dallas, and it's rumored that he was associated with the mob as well. One of Lee. Just a second.
You're good.
Sorry, my kid's crying upstairs. I thought my wife was calling me up, but we're good. So one of the famous quotes from Lee Harvey Oswald is that he was a quote unquote patsy in a scheme. So he had said he was,
I think it was, quote, "I didn't shoot nobody. I'm just a patsy," or something like that.
Yep. So he claims up and down that he didn't shoot anybody. Jack Ruby kills him. The theory behind that was that he killed him because he was so like caught up in the grief of losing President Kennedy, and that it was like a chivalrous thing to do because he was on his way to the court hearing where he was gonna have to confront Jackie Kennedy, and she was gonna testify against him or kind of talk out against him.
Yeah,
and
it was like so he was doing Jackie a favor so that she wouldn't have to testify what she saw and relive the moment, basically.
Right. So it was seen as like a chivalrous act, right, that he killed him. But some of the theories that buzz around with that is, hey, if Jack Ruby was associated with the mob and the mob was at all associated with this and Lee Harvey Oswald was going to rat them out, then they had him taken care of, right? It is really convenient that a couple days after he shoots the president that he dies. So if there were any co-conspirators that he was involved with, he was never able to tell anyone. But the quote that he's a patsy does say a lot, you know, that other organizations or people could have been involved in this, in the shooting. So a couple other things that are a little bit mysterious about this. One is the magic bullet, right? This bullet that created 7 entry and exit wounds. And kind of had some weird trajectory to it, right? So it comes from behind, in and out of Kennedy's throat, into Governor Connolly's back, out his chest, and then into his arm and then thigh. So the trajectory of that, the bullet would have had to probably change angle a little bit or kind of bounce around. But also, like, I've hunted a little bit, and you know, I have a few guns that I've shot and things like that. Bullets typically deform on impact, or will bounce around a little bit on bone and things like that. Whereas this bullet was actually found when they rushed the governor to the hospital. The bullet just appeared on the gurney where he was laying. So it supposedly fell out of his thigh and was found on the gurney, but it was in pristine condition. Like the bullet wasn't deformed at all. Bullets will sometimes, you know,
they'll shred
and shatter. Yeah, they'll turn into shrapnel, and this one was just this perfectly pristine still. And so the theory there is, how could this bullet have done all that damage and still be in perfect shape, you know? How could it have gone on the trajectory it did to create all the wounds that it did and then just magically appear on this table? And so they call that the magic bullet or the single bullet theory. But the other major theory associated with that, is the grassy knoll theory. And I'm sure a lot of you out there listening have heard of the grassy knoll. This has to do with the Zapruder film in Kennedy's head going back into the left after he shot, right? That's kind of the famous phrase, is back into the left, back into the left. And if you've ever watched Seinfeld, there's actually a really funny episode where Kramer and Newman go to a baseball game, and there's like a baseball player involved in a spitting incident. One of them gets spit on, and so then they have this. They're like wondering, how could this have happened? And then they have this whole thing of like, there must have been a second spitter. His head went back into the left, and it's like this whole thing. So if you haven't seen that clip, you should go watch it. But so the head goes back into the left, right? And so the original theory is that Lee Harvey Oswald was behind them, and that the bullet went through Kennedy's back and then into Governor Connolly. But the bullet, I mean, his head looks like the bullet comes from that kind of front right side and takes his head back to the left. So where could that bullet have come from? So there was a radio operator that was working in a railroad operator, excuse me, that was working in a tower near the railroad, and his name was Lee Bowers. And he was working in this tower, and there was an alleyway near the grassy knoll, this grassy knoll area of the plaza that they were in. And he said that he saw some cars, like very anonymous looking or like inconspicuous looking cars, going in and out of this alleyway about 20 minutes before the shooting started. And he said that he saw a couple men right around the fence kind of looking into the plaza right before the president was shot. And he also said that he witnessed a puff of smoke in the area. And along with that, there were upwards of 33 witnesses that also stated that they heard shots ring out in the area of the grassy knoll as well. So the theory there is that there could have been another shooter there that was shooting from the front. Another piece of evidence to corroborate this theory, and this is a whole other thing too, is so right after he shot, the president's taken to the hospital. They declare him dead there, and they do an autopsy. So they get a doctor to do an autopsy there, and the Dallas doctors, I guess, they theorize that the bullet in the front was actually the bullet in Kennedy's throat was actually an entrance wound. So the theory was that it came through his back and out his throat, but they said that actually was an entrance wound in his throat, and that the bullet went through his throat and out his back. So it's opposite of how the official story is. And so that would say that the shooter would have had to be in front of the president in the area of this grassy knoll. So there's a piece of evidence to potentially corroborate that theory. Some problems with that. So right after the autopsy is done there, this is actually illegal at the time. Texas law said that they had to conduct the autopsy and have the president's body taken care of in Texas, but they actually they
immediately shipped it out back to DC.
Yeah. So illegally, right? They ship him out to DC. And the weird thing with this is they have a pathologist who is a doctor that studies infectious diseases and pathogens and things like that. They had this doctor do another autopsy. So he didn't really have
little to no experience in gunshot wounds.
Right. So why would they even contact him? Right. And the fishy thing with that is that he corroborated the theory that the bullet went through Kennedy's back and through his throat. And so they actually, during the investigation, so after this happened, President Lyndon B. Johnson, shortly after, got together a commission or an investigative committee called the Warren Commission that was made up of a lot of ex-government officials or current government officials. It had the ex-CIA director that was in at the time of the Bay of Pigs incident. His name was Alan Dulles. And a lot of other kind of high-level government officials that were tasked with investigating all the strangeness around the assassination. And so they actually contacted...
Something they tried to do when they made the Warren Commission was make sure it was made of people that had a spotless record. Nobody that had any weirdness going on about them.
Right. And... I mean, Alan Dulles, he was a CIA director. He resigned right after the Bay of Pigs. I don't know if you see that as weirdness or him being frustrated and just being kind of forced out of the CIA. But he may have had some kind of vendetta, against President Kennedy. But the investigation questions the Dallas doctors, the doctors that did the initial investigation, and said, hey, this wound that you said was an entrance wound, could you have been mistaken on that? Like, couldn't you have made a mistake? And the Dallas doctors basically said, yeah, we could have. It's easy that we could have made a mistake. The fishy thing with that is the doctor in DC that said it was not an entrance wound, he was a pathologist. Like you said, he had little to no experience with gunshot wounds. The other thing is that between these two autopsies, there are variations within 4 inches of the locations of the wounds. So there's a lot of variation there. And then a couple days after the doctor in DC does his autopsy, he ends up burning his autopsy notes. So he just burns them.
What the heck's up with that?
That's got to be illegal, right? Burning an official record like that has to be illegal. So it definitely doesn't seem like standard practice, right? And to me, it kind of sounds like they called the Dallas doctors and they're like, you made a mistake on that, right? And they're like, no, you made a mistake on that, right? And they're like, yeah, we probably did. Like, it seems like they kind of convinced them that, hey, you made a mistake. At least in my mind, that's kind of what it sounds like. So there's this fishy autopsy that happens illegally. And then also Kennedy's brain and a lot of other key evidence just disappears. It's gone. They don't have any of it. And that's important because they could gain some ballistic or forensic information from the brain and other parts of his head that could tell some information about trajectory. Sorry, I still have hiccups. Trajectory or entrance points of the bullets, potentially. So it's pretty big that information went missing as well. But that's the story, right? So he's killed 3 shots. 2 of them hit him. Governor Connolly's hit as well. There's the magic bullet. The official story is Lee Harvey Oswald did it. He fired all 3 shots. He's killed 2 days later by Jack Ruby. And then there's the theory surrounding the grassy knoll, that there were more shooters, or at least one other shooter, right, that shot the president. But again, this is really, I feel like, the kickoff point for a lot of conspiracies moving forward, and a point where
this is like the breaking point where most people, like, I think, went, okay, I don't know if we can trust everything the government says. Like,
right. It's kind of like that dividing event that you said, it divided the populace from the government a little bit.
And I looked it up just barely. The number of polled Americans that believe, the official story of JFK's assassination is, let's see. It said 61% of people do not believe the official story. And that's like within the last 2 years.
Right.
It is technically the lowest it has been since then, since the actual story was released. But still, like, that's still more than half people that believe that is not what happened.
Yeah. And I believe those polling numbers have probably come down because it's been 60 years. And
right. And people today don't know anything about it, right? They just know that JFK was assassinated.
Yeah, like, I think if you were to ask anybody that was alive at the time and old enough to remember it, they could probably tell you the exact moment, like where they were at when it happened, like when they heard about it. It was that big of a thing, right? Like, I feel like obviously our generation, like 9/11 was the really big thing for us. And I don't know how old you were at the time, but I was 7 or 8 years old. And I still remember, like, I was at school when it happened. And I still remember, like, my teacher turning the TV on and we were watching the news of it, like, going down. And, like, that's so vivid in my brain. They sent us home from school that day. And I just remember going home and my parents, like, all day, we were just watching the news. And it's like, I feel like this was kind of that generation's big event, like they remember it really well. It was like a huge thing internationally. And so it was a big thing for not just the US, but the whole world that this happened. So very interesting. There's a lot of theories around it. I'm not going to get into all the theories of like who done it, but I will say
we're gonna go into theories and stuff in the next episode and the aftermath of that kind of stuff. We're gonna two-parter.
I will say I am with the majority that does not believe the official story.
Something is a little off. I don't know what all of it or if it's just part of it, but I have a lot of information that will be in part 2 that has led me to believe that there's no way that this is the correct story.
Right. And a lot of documents recently have been released too, because there were a lot of things that the government had mandated to keep confidential for like 70 years after the assassination happened. But a lot of those have been released, and I believe all of them have been released now, if I'm not mistaken. And so we're finding
most.
Is it most? Okay.
Yeah, I'll get more into that, in the next episode.
Okay.
But
yeah, there's things the government wanted to keep secret about this, and so you have
it didn't
wonder,
most of it didn't get declassified until, what was it, 2017, I believe.
Yeah, there was I think there was a couple. 2017 was the big one.
Yeah, they were supposed to do it like a long time ago, and they just never did.
Right.
So.
Yeah, but it is a crazy event. And again, this was I think even if you're not a conspiracy nut or a conspiracy theorist, everyone probably has some kind of idea on the JFK thing, right? Oh yeah, I believe this or this or this. Everyone has some kind of thing to say about it. And it's just so mysterious because of how many enemies he made. The Soviet Union, Cuba, communism in general, right? A lot of people within the US government, military, things like that. There's so many people that could have been involved that it's hard to say. It's easy to contradict the original story, but it's hard to point the finger at anybody as well.
Right. And it's just it's weird because when Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald, and we'll get more into this kind of stuff in the next episode, but it's weird because Jack Ruby really had no reason to do so. He's quoted saying he didn't really know why he did it, kind of thing. Just said, I had a gun in my right hip pocket, and impulsively, if that's the correct word here, I saw him, and that's all I can say, and I didn't care what happened to me.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of he's saying oh, I just did it impulsively, kind of thing. It's just that's weird. Nobody impulsively just kills somebody in front of a bunch of policemen, kind of thing. Right. I don't know.
Well, you don't just show up to a news a prisoner transport with a gun,
And another thing is that he loved dogs. Everybody knows that he loved dogs. And he had a dog with him in his car, and he left it in the car. Knowing him, he wouldn't have done that if he wasn't, if he knew he wasn't going to be able to get back to the car. He would have, left the dog at home, kind of thing.
Right.
So I don't know. There's a lot that we'll go into, and a lot of people look into this, and a lot of people die. It's kind of crazy, but and then I also found out, when he said he burned the autopsy report. He was quoted saying that he didn't want it to become a collector's item, and that's why he burned it. It's that is a horrible excuse.
Who gets to decide that? That's so.
It's people are going to be bidding on this, and I don't want it to be part of that. So I'm just going to burn it.
That doctor. Did any charges come up against that guy for burning that kind of record, or?
I don't know. That's something I'll have to look into for next episode, but that is a good question. I didn't know this, but he did not want to become a collector's item as Lincoln's bloodstained chair from Ford's Theater is today. I did not know that somebody had Lincoln's bloodstained chair.
Have you heard all the similarities between the Lincoln and Kennedy assassinations?
Oh yeah.
So let me read this real quick. So there's a theory, right, that there's some connection between the two. So there's a lot of coincidences. So one, Lincoln and Kennedy each have 7 letters. Both presidents were elected to Congress in 46, so Lincoln 1846, Kennedy 1946, and then later to the presidency in 60, the year 60. Both assassins, John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald, were born in 39 and were known by their 3 names composed of 15 letters. Both So John Wilkes Booth ran from a theater and was caught in a warehouse. Lee Harvey Oswald ran from a warehouse and was caught in a theater. The assassins were both Southerners. Both of the president's successors were named Johnson, and both were born in the year 08, so 1808, 1908. Both Lincoln and Kennedy were particularly concerned with civil rights. Lincoln freed the slaves, right? Kennedy was very influential in the civil rights movement in the 60s. And then they both made their views strongly known. Both presidents were shot in the head on a Friday. Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy who told him not to go to Ford's Theater. Kennedy had a secretary named Evelyn Lincoln, and she warned him not to go to Dallas. Both Oswald and Booth were assassinated before they could be put on trial. Here's some true statements about the two similarities. Both were elected to Congress in 46. Let's see. Both were married in their 30s to women who were in their 20s. Both were shot on a Friday, and then both were shot in the head. Both of the president's successors were named Johnson. Both assassins are known by their 3 names. I said that one. And then, let's see. Yeah, so those are kind of like some of the weird similarities, but it's just funny that somebody like connected all those dots, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're just
I seriously doubt there's anything connected between the two. Like, there's no way. It's like 100 years apart. But still, it's like, it is kind of interesting. Like, that is that's interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah. I think it's just more comical than anything, like people grasping at straws to create clickbait or to create something for people to pull strings from.
I think it's fun. It's fun information, but I don't think anybody should take it to heart, kind of thing. It is
fun. Yeah, I agree. But also, I wouldn't trust the official story. The 888-page Warren Commission report, that's too much information for anyone to read through and like really make a good assumption. Yeah. It's like a lot of the bills put out by the U.S. government that are thousands of pages long and no one reads them, or they tell you also you got to read it before we can or we got to pass it before we can read it.
Yeah, the just so for a timeline for you guys, the Warren Commission was put together, I think, a week after Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in, and they didn't come out with an official story until I think it was a little over a year after they were put together.
Yeah.
I think it was about like 12 or 13 months. I could be wrong by a month or two, but it was about a year. And I don't know. I mean, I know you want to do a thorough job, but I think a year is a little long. And I feel like a year is also plenty of time to mold it into what you would want it to be. I don't know if, like, I guess, long time ago, it was, what was this, 80 years? No, not 80.
60 years
long time ago. 60 years ago. Obviously, technology wasn't as good. It's harder to investigate things. But, like, today, I feel like they'd have a story out within, like, a month at the latest, kind of thing.
Yeah. So
about like who the gunman was and like what happened and where it was from, that kind of stuff. But like, obviously technology's better, but a full year?
Well, there was also another commission put together in like 1978, the Assassination Committee. Let's see. It's the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations, and they were put together in 1976 to investigate the Warren Report findings. So this was 13 years later. They're still investigating the official story. Like, 13 years after, we don't believe you, which it's 12 years after the Warren Commission report comes out. So 12 years later, they're like, there's still a lot of weirdness here. Let's put together another committee. And that committee, I believe, is still in existence.
Fun fact, they also investigated the Martin Luther King Jr.
That's right.
Assassination.
Yeah, I heard some theories that the two were connected through the CIA, apparently. Both assassinations there. Because that was around the same time, right? Like, MLK was assassinated in
68, so 5 years later.
Okay. But Kennedy had a lot to do with the civil rights movement, though. So,
right. And obviously so did MLK.
Yeah. So it's possible that the two are connected.
And we know them both by their initials, JFK, MLK.
Uh-huh.
Conspiracy? Coincidence?
How many letters are there in their full names? I think Kennedy probably has more because of Fitzgerald. That's just a mouthful.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so yeah, we will go more into the aftermath. Today was mostly, just to figure out just a background and what happened. And we're going to go a little bit more into the conspiracies and investigations after. And that will be next week's episode. And I am really excited to get into that one. And I hope you guys are excited to hear it.
Well, thanks for listening, and let us know if there's any other things that you'd like us to cover, or if you have any other opinions on JFK. We'd love to hear them. Reach out to us on the social media or through email, and we will be back to weekly content now, again, after our short hiatus. So we look forward to getting more content out to you guys, and also to hearing from you on what you want us to cover.
We are very excited, and we really appreciate all your guys' support. Please share with your friends, and we actually have a few ideas for supporter style, kind of like a Patreon type thing, but not Patreon. Let us know if there's anything you'd be interested in hearing in that side. Few ideas we had are being able to listen in on the show live and send in messages in like chats that we can read while we're doing it. Like, so you can, tell us what you think, or if we got something right or wrong kind of thing. Also, we want to do some stupid episodes that have nothing to do with conspiracies or hauntings or paranormals. And they're just straight up dumb. That would be for them as well. Like, we found a sour pickle we want to try.
Yep.
Just random stupid stuff like that, and like the cryptid tournament and things like that. So
cryptid cage match. I think
we got to get a few of those. Yeah, we got to get a few of those actually recorded and put up before we can actually make the subscriber thing go live. But yeah, look forward to that, and thank you again.
Yep. Thanks. We love you guys.
Bye-bye.